Most of you aren't subscribed. Make sure to subscribe, as it helps out the channel. Without further ado, the show opens with our MC Taro Sakamoto, a highly respected hitman, seen coldly marching through enemy territory. Spotting several men firing at him, Sakamoto nonchalantly deflects the projectiles, dashing through the men only to dispatch them one by one. As Sakamoto heads deeper into enemy lines, he continues to brandish his skills, feared by every gangster, but also admired by every hitman. One day while shopping, Sakamoto ran into Aoi, the love of his life. Having fallen in love, Sakamoto quit his life as a hitman and got married to Aoi only to help give birth to Hana. Now living the life of a family man, we cut to the present where Sakamoto runs a convenience store, but outside a blonde kid states he's finally tracked down Sakamoto. Hard at work, Sakamoto watches as a kid draws a target on his store's sliding doors, asking for a free juice box if he hits a bullseye. With Aoi and Hana watching the boy miss, the boy asks for another go, accidentally spilling some of his calligraphy ink on a businessman that enters the store. Annoyed, the businessman prepares to punish the boy, but Sakamoto steps in, scaring the businessman with his sheer aura. Sakamoto had prepared to assassinate the businessman with a pen, but luckily no violence was needed. But everyone suddenly notices a blonde boy in his store. The boy compliments Sakamoto's readiness to assassinate the businessman, personally introducing himself as Shin the Psychic, but Sakamoto thinks of incapacitating Shin with a single blow to the head. Sensing his demise, Shin reassures Sakamoto that he's here to talk, sitting down only to confirm that Sakamoto had indeed given up on his hitman life. Seeing Sakamoto with a round body, Shin reminds Sakamoto he was once the legendary hitman, begging Sakamoto to return to his duties. As Sakamoto slurps up some instant noodles, Shin chooses to smoke to relieve some stress, but in an instant Sakamoto splits Shin's cigarette into two, reminding Shin they're in a no-smoking zone. Realizing that Sakamoto hasn't lost his touch since he's retired, Sakamoto is suddenly called by an older man for a favor, making Shin wonder if Sakamoto is only disguising as a civilian. Having reached the older man's backyard, Sakamoto instantly gets to work cutting down a tree. Next, Sakamoto is asked by a lady to help feed her picky daughter some vegetables, managing to use a silver spoon to feed her. Finally, Sakamoto sees two boys fighting over who gets to play with a ball, choosing to split the ball into two with his bare hands, solving the issue. As Sakamoto takes a break, Shin realizes Sakamoto is a handyman for the whole town, praising Sakamoto for concealing his identity so well, but Shin still thinks Sakamoto has fallen so far from his legendary status. Heading to his car, Shin notes how it's only been 5 years since he's seen Sakamoto, still admiring Sakamoto for being so awesome, wishing for the day Sakamoto returns. Suddenly receiving a call from his boss, Shin reports that he had failed to convince Sakamoto to return, but the boss asks if Shin had eliminated Sakamoto for betraying them. Shin tries to convince the boss to leave Sakamoto alone, but the boss reminds Shin he'll be eliminated and replaced if he fails. That night, Shin washes up, thinking back on his missions with Sakamoto, knowing he should be the one to put his old partner down. Heading back to the store the next day, Shin walks past Aoi, Hana, and the boy playing, apologizing in advance. Upon entering Sakamoto's store, Shin tells Sakamoto he'll be leaving town today, choosing to pull out his gun as he bids farewell to Sakamoto. Seeing Shin pull the trigger, Sakamoto chooses to spit his cough drop as Shin's bullet, deflecting it onto a bag of chips on the counter. Trying to reload, Shin is distracted by an ice cream flung at him, but suddenly realizes that Sakamoto has disappeared. Cautiously scanning the aisles, Sakamoto manages to distract Shin by making some noise in one of the aisles, only to make use of a rubber band and some cough drops to snipe Shin through the shelves. Rushing to evade Sakamoto's cough drops, Shin and Sakamoto catch a glance of each other at the end of the aisle, but Sakamoto tosses a cream puff at Shin, obstructing his vision. Having bought enough time, Sakamoto sneaks up from behind, winding up a torrential kick that sends Shin flying through several shelves, reminding Shin of when he used to train with Sakamoto. As Shin falls unconscious, he suddenly awakens a few hours later, spotting Hana and Aoi relieved to see him awake, learning he had been brought to the second floor of Sakamoto's store. Seeing Sakamoto's loving family, Shin gets weirded out, confused as to why they're serving him a lovely meal even after his assassination attempt. Believing the food to be poisoned, Shin chooses to face the challenge head-on, but instead begins breaking down, grateful to be served such a delicious and hearty meal. Finally understanding why Sakamoto retired, Shin and Sakamoto head outside, prompting Shin to graciously thank Sakamoto and his family for taking care of him. With Sakamoto asking Shin to come again soon, we cut to later that night, where Shin sits before his boss and his gang, begging his boss to let Sakamoto live. The boss and his henchmen scoff at such a pathetic request, reminding Shin that Sakamoto must be eliminated, having abandoned their organization. But Shin offers to give his life for Sakamoto. With the boss accepting Shin's offer, the boss secretly thinks about how gullible Shin is, but having already expected the boss to lie to him, Shin turns his gun on the boss. As Shin begins a shootout with his former organization, we cut to Sakamoto listening in on their conversation, choosing to transform his convenience store into an armory littered with deadly weapons. As Sakamoto opts for a stun gun, we cut back to Shin, who slowly begins dismantling the enemies, switching from his gun to martial arts to dispatch the men. Unfortunately, Shin is caught off guard, struck by a bazooka, but still manages to run for cover. With the men rallying together, the boss reminds everyone that Shin is a psychic, meaning he can read people's minds if they're close enough. Continuing his onslaught, Shin takes out a few more men, realizing he has a single magazine left, ultimately getting struck in the leg by a bullet. Falling onto his knees, Shin is surrounded, finally giving up. Luckily, Sakamoto appears, paralyzing the men surrounding Shin. As the boss orders his men to take out Sakamoto, Sakamoto nonchalantly opens a pair of chopsticks, increasing his speed to knock out the men, all whilst flexing he can catch the bullets with chopsticks. Spotting a man wielding a katana, Sakamoto easily evades, kicking the man aside only to block a spray of bullets with pins, slaying the gunman with said pins. Cleaning up the remaining gunmen, Sakamoto locks onto the boss and his remaining henchmen, running to evade the projectiles only to slay the boss with a single slash. With Shin reminded of why he respects Sakamoto so much, Shin realizes Sakamoto had bugged his gun when he was unconscious and is suddenly offered a job by Sakamoto. Sakamoto says he'll pay Shin 800 yen an hour. Cutting to the next day, where Shin has started on his first day, asking Sakamoto to not eat ramen, especially since they're low on stock. As Hana and Aoi compliment Shin's new apron, Shin makes use of his psychic abilities to help out an elderly lady, but is threatened by Sakamoto to keep their past a secret from the others. Fast at work, Shin restocks the shelves and mans the cash register, cutting to later that day, where Shin praises Sakamoto for slaying all those men. Hearing Shin mention Sakamoto slaying people, Aoi reminds Sakamoto he promised to leave his life of a hitman behind, prompting Sakamoto to reassure Aoi that he dealt non-lethal blows. Angry, Aoi reminds Sakamoto they have a family rule, and if Sakamoto ever breaks the rule, she'll divorce him, scaring Sakamoto. When Shin wonders what this family rule is, Sakamoto silences Shin in his mind, both heading to Niokita Chinatown to pick up some items. Seeing Sakamoto pick up some heavenly pork buns for the whole family, and at half the price, Shin admires Sakamoto for being so family-oriented, but Shin is still curious about Sakamoto's family rule. Refusing to explain anything, the duo continue walking, suddenly spotting a pink-haired girl burst through the window of a high-rise, coincidentally collapsing onto Sakamoto. Although Sakamoto is fine, Sakamoto gets sad seeing his pork buns have been squashed, but our duo suddenly sees several men call out to the pink-haired girl. Introducing herself as Lu Xiaodang, the mystery girl, Lu scoffs at the men's pathetic attempts to catch her, but Shin notices Sakamoto is more sad, thinking about how upset Hana and Aoi will be having no buns to bring home. As the men rush Lu, she begins knocking out the men with her martial arts, something Shin recognizes as Tai Chi, watching as 3 men suddenly surround Lu. Even still, Lu tosses and knocks out 2 of the men, unfortunately captured by the third. Seeing the men prepare to slash at Lu's legs, Sakamoto stops the man's knife with some tongs, breaking them only to put the man to sleep. Seeing an opening, Shin knocks out the man, restraining Lu with a sign, allowing Lu to disarm the final gun-wielding man. knocking him out. As the trio catch their breaths, they suddenly hear an even larger swarm of men chasing after them, forcing Sakamoto to pick Lu up, all three fleeing from the swarm. Elsewhere, we see a henchman reporting that they've failed to capture Lu, pissing Wang off, the CEO of Danshokai Incorporated. Wang reminds everyone he slayed Lu's entire village, and still they failed to capture her. But before Wang can dismiss his men, a knife decapitates his messenger's head. Known as Bacho and Sun He, Wang orders the psychotic brothers to hunt down Lu no matter what, stating that Lu has the key for them to rule over the black market. With the brothers given free rein to slaughter all that gets in their way, we cut back to our trio where Lu tells Shin and Sakamoto about her belonging to the Lu Mafia clan. Lu says she is currently in possession of her family's hidden vault key. But when Shin suggests Lu get rid of such a dangerous key, Lu refuses since her family died protecting the key, remembering the final moments of her clan burning down all whilst her parents beckon Lu to flee with the key. Lu apologizes for getting others involved, leaping away, but before Shin can follow after Lu, Sakamoto holds Shin back. Before Lu disappears, Sakamoto asks if Lu can make pork buns, agreeing to assist Lu, and in exchange Lu must make pork buns for them once they make it out alive. Before Shin can question Sakamoto's judgment, Bacho appears, landing a direct kick on a Sakamoto that sends him flying. Sun scolds Bacho for attacking so barbarically, alerting Shin as to who these monsters are. But Lu says they're twin hitmen that charge high hit rates for their perfect resume of assassinations. On top of things, the brothers have been seen sketching the heads of their victims, something that pleases Bacho since they're so well known. But Sun reminds Bacho they should be more elusive since they're hitmen. Seeing Shin dash in close, Sun easily catches Shin's fist, mocking Shin for acting so emotionally after Sakamoto was defeated. Leaping back, Shin feels bad for those who disrespect Sakamoto, but Bacho takes the chance to blink behind Lu, preparing a lethal slash. Appearing out of nowhere, Sakamoto smashes Bacho into the ground, shocking everyone as Sakamoto's punch tears a hole in the roof they're standing on, making Sun wonder who Sakamoto is. As Sakamoto ignores Sun's questions, Bacho says he'll pay Sakamoto back, all while Sun asks for Lu to hand over the key in exchange for a quick death. Hearing Lu choosing to give her life to protect the key, Sun reveals that her parents said something similar before he slaughtered them, infuriating Lu as she rushes forward. Grabbing and tossing Lu back, Lu is reminded not to get emotional. But Lu says the vault contains her ancestors' legacy, something Lu's father had given his life to protect. Having heard enough, Sun tosses a kunai at Lu, forcing Sakamoto to intercept the blade, asking the brothers to not dictate others' lives. With Lu seeing Sakamoto bleeding from catching the kunai, Lu asks why Sakamoto would go so far to protect her, flashing back to the Christmas season when a younger-looking Sakamoto has brought Aoi a gift. Aoi is angry seeing Sakamoto covered in blood, knowing he had to murder people to get her a gift. Seeing as Sakamoto refuses to change, Aoi chooses to jump from their location, forcing Sakamoto to chase after her, clinging onto her. Luckily, the snow beneath them softened their fall. But Aoi uses the moment to show Sakamoto just like how he cares for Aoi. There are people that care for the people Sakamoto kills, asking Sakamoto to promise to never slay another and instead save people to atone for his past. With Shin reading Sakamoto's mind, he finally realizes what the no-kill rule is, watching as the brothers rush them. As Sakamoto blocks all of Sun's attacks, Shin chooses to evade and dodge all of Bacho's slashes, intriguing the brothers as to who Sakamoto is. Choosing to unveil one of their hidden techniques, both Bacho and Sun fire off a flurry of attacks at Sakamoto, but Sakamoto nonchalantly slips them all, asking for a pain patch having stressed his neck. Before the brothers can unveil another hidden technique, Sakamoto puts Bacho to sleep with a cooking pot, following up by breaking Sun's weapon using a wok. Seeing Shin helping Sakamoto patch up his hand, Sun attempts to target Lu, but Shin had read his mind, binding and tossing Sun back with a rope. For the finishing blow, Sakamoto smashes a refrigerator on his son, tying the two men up as Lu wonders who our duo is. As Sakamoto munches on some crab, We cut over to Wong, who wonders where the brothers are. Yearning for the day he can open the vault before him. Suddenly receiving a delivery, Wong spots the brothers tied up, suddenly restrained by Lu, who says she needs to pay Wong back for all that he's done. A few minutes later, Lu is seen repeatedly punching Wong, exciting Shin as he wants to join in, but Sakamoto prepares to put Shin to sleep. Having had enough, Lu says she shouldn't slay people and instead should live a happy life, choosing to finally unlock the vault with her key. As the trio head inside, they're amazed by the antique relics littered all over the vault. Something Shin reads are valuable items every past leader of the Lu clan treasures. Seeing the item her father left behind, Lu reads that her father had left behind some valuable booze to one day share with Lu, making Lu treasure her family. Sitting down, Sakamoto unveils the squished pork buns, snacking on them as Lu remarks the Japanese buns are pretty tasty. The next morning, Shin sees reports of the aftermath of their brawl with Wand and the brothers, suddenly seeing Sakamoto enter the store exhausted. Seeing Lu enter with an apron, Shin wonders why Lu doesn't just sell her family's vault instead of working. But Sakamoto reminds Shin that he is now part of the family and must follow their family's no-kill rule. At the same time, we see several figures receive a bounty on Sakamoto and Shin, with Sakamoto's bounty valued at 1 billion yen. With several days passing, Lu continues to show up to work, but is scolded by Shin for being 2 hours late. Restocking the aisles, Shin calls out Lu for placing detergent in the drinks section of the fridge, but Lu says customers can figure it out themselves, stuffing everything into one place. Shin wonders if Lu has ever worked a job in her life, learning that Lu used to help her dad dig and bury strange bags, but this makes Shin ask for Lu to be fired. Hearing the two argue, Sakamoto asks for Shin to not say such mean things and that Lu should apologize when she's late, shocking the two. Heading outside, Sakamoto reminds Shin to sweep outside and for Lu to finish prepping the pork buns, but Shin is more worried realizing how talkative Sakamoto is. Sakamoto reminds Shin that he is human too, but out of nowhere a second Sakamoto appears, sitting down at the counter and picking up where the first one left off. The first Sakamoto accuses the second of being a doppelganger, thrusting a sword at the second, but the second dodges, holding up a blade to the first as the first pulls out a gun. With both Sakamotos standing down, the second Sakamoto greets Nagumo, prompting the first Sakamoto to unsheath his disguise. Shin gets terrified, unable to read Nagumo's mind, watching as Nagumo turns and laughs at both himself and Lu. Annoyed, Shin and Lu punish Nagumo, demanding to know how Sakamoto knows Nagumo, learning that Nagumo works in the supermarket across the street and is friends with Sakamoto. Hearing Nagumo mention he is 18, Shin wonders how Sakamoto met him, but Sakamoto reveals Nagumo is 27 and that there is no supermarket across the street. Seeing as Nagumo lied to them again, Shin and Lu beat and tie Nagumo up, prompting Nagumo to mention that Sakamoto has a 1 billion yen bounty on his head, but Lu and Shin refuse to believe another one of Nagumo's outrageous lies. Nagumo states the JA had recently decided on it, and the news will be released tomorrow, but just then a pizza delivery arrives, exciting everyone. As the delivery man places the pizza on the counter, Nagumo says there are rumors of Sakamoto's legendary return, but just then Shin reads the delivery man's mind, hearing the man mocking everyone. Deeming himself to be Pizza Nakajima, Nakajima is revealed to be a hitman, using the tied-up Nagumo as a hostage. Upon seeing Sakamoto and Lu nonchalantly eating pizza, Nakajima warns Sakamoto to take him seriously, but in an instant Nagumo appears behind Nakajima, placing him in a stranglehold. As Nagumo tightens his grip, Sakamoto orders Nagumo to release the unconscious man, making Nagumo ask if Sakamoto will truly survive without killing. Nagumo reminds Sakamoto that he himself may be after Sakamoto, defusing the situation seeing that Shin and Lu are ready to fight, but reminds Sakamoto that his kind specializes in taking down other hitmen. Before Nagumo leaves, Sakamoto asks who is benefiting from his death, but Nagumo has no idea, calling out how stupid it was for Sakamoto to draw attention to himself when he wiped out Wong and his company. Nagumo says there won't be any more newbie assassination attempts, taking Nakajima with him only to bid farewell to Sakamoto, disappearing before Shin can follow him. As Sakamoto turns to face the pizza box, we zoom out to see several people watching Sakamoto through the pizza box, all refusing to believe such a fat man could be worth 1 billion yen. Speaking up, one of the men from Don Denkai reminds the others to not underestimate Sakamoto. Having heard he used to belong to the Order, a mythical elite group, but people still believe Sakamoto is rusty after 5 years of retirement. Just then, they all turn their heads to the screen, hearing Sakamoto threaten them to try their best, only to destroy the camera. That evening, Shin wonders if Sakamoto will be okay now that others have his sights on him, but Sakamoto thinks they should lay low for a while. Just then, Hana and Aoi appear, both excited for tomorrow as Sakamoto suddenly realizes what they have planned for tomorrow. Having arrived at Sugar Park Amusement Park, the gang immediately rides a roller coaster, all having mixed feelings about such a ride. Hana takes the chance to show off the park's cute bunny mascot, Sugar Bunny, someone that reminds Lou of Sakamoto. Seeing Aoi so excited to spend time with everyone, Shin declares their operation today is to protect the Sakamotos and ensure everyone has a good time. Seeing Lou scanning the surrounding area for enemies, Shin says that he can read the minds of people in a 30-meter radius, stating those worked up are most likely hitmen. At that moment, Shin detects someone approaching, alerting Sakamoto. Revealed to be Kuriai Ninga disguised as a janitor, Kuriai makes his way towards Sakamoto all whilst Lou guides Aoi and Hana elsewhere. As Kuriai passes Sakamoto, he pulls out a needle ready to slay Sakamoto, but without batting an eye, Sakamoto plunges a pin into Kuriai's chest, only for Shin to carry Kuriai away. With Aoi and Hana not realizing what happened, Shin and Lou dispose of Kuriai's body, amazed that Sakamoto incapacitated Kuriai without hitting any vital organs. Having witnessed everything, Tatsu scolds Kuriai for being so obvious, annoyed at Shin's mind-reading powers, but wonders if he can suppress his killing intent to go undetected. With Tatsu passing by Shin, he manages to brush by without being detected, cutting to later that day where the gang is riding another roller coaster ride. With Shin and Lou positioned at the back to spot any attackers, Shin reports he doesn't hear anything suspicious, but Lou points out a strange pointy-haired looking man. Hearing the two talk about him, Tatsu lets his killing intent slip, alerting Shin to Tatsu's hitman status. As Tatsu fires off a bullet at Sakamoto, Sakamoto simply deflects it with his bulletproof glasses, but Shin takes the chance to remove his harness. Leaping out of his seat, Shin falls onto Tatsu's location, dragging him out as they both fall to a lower railing on the ride. Unable to read Tatsu's mind, Shin suddenly jumps, sensing the ride appearing behind him, but Tatsu uses the opening to toss 2 knives at Shin. Knowing he can't dodge both, Shin is forced to endure a scratch to the leg, suddenly collapsing having been poisoned. Tatsu remarks that his poison will take Shin's life in a few moments, using the chance to slander Sakamoto as he points out how Sakamoto fears death. Defending Sakamoto's name, Shin gets up, once again leaping over the ride approaching from behind, but this time he jumps onto his seat, dragging Tatsu for the ride. Tatsu is impressed, easily able to defend against Shin's pathetic punches, forcing Shin to rack his brain for a solution as Tatsu pulls out a knife. Scanning the surroundings, Shin hears something, evading Tatsu's advances only to drag him, falling onto a play. Having taken on the disguise of Sugar Bunny himself, Shin catches Tatsu off guard when he manages to move and evade his attacks, even going on the offense even after being blinded by Tatsu's poison. As the crowd cheers on the bunny, it's revealed that Sakamoto is off in the crowd instructing Shin how to move, perfectly countering and forcing Tatsu into a corner. Infuriated, Tatsu slashes at Shin's head, surprised to see Shin has his eyes closed, but Sakamoto spots an opening, ordering Shin to put Tatsu to sleep, wrapping up the performance. As Lou continues to ride the roller coaster, we zoom out to see Boiled and Abiguro now being dispatched to deal with Sakamoto. But Boiled orders Abiguro to not slack off and not commit unnecessary murders, something Abiguro finds attractive. Back with Shin, Lou helps apply the poison antidote to his eyes, all while Sakamoto asks who hired Tatsu. Seeing Tatsu playing dumb, Lou borrows Tatsu's poison knife, stabbing him only to begin pouring out the antidote, demanding Tatsu talk if he doesn't want to perish. Tatsu reveals that he was hired by Don Denkai, an underground company with a toxic work environment that requires hitmen to work solo. Shin calls Tatsu a hypocrite for selling out his employer, but Tatsu states he isn't loyal since he's part-time, adding that he is part of the JAA as well. With Lu curious as to what the JAA is, Shin shows Lu his license for the Japanese Association of Assassins. Apparently, the JAA is a company that helps manage the top hitmen, giving them hits in exchange for a fee, and only works with the top 400 hitmen, with both Shin and Sakamoto being members. Seeing as this is the perfect chance, Tatsu asks if Sakamoto used to be in the order, but upon seeing Sakamoto's serious glare, Tatsu is impressed that the rumors he heard weren't just lies. At that moment, Aoi and Hana arrive, recognizing the tied-up Tatsu as the villain they saw in the performance, convinced that Shin is simply practicing more performances with Tatsu brushing him off. With the gang all heading off to enjoy Hana's handmade meals, Shin stays back to confiscate Tatsu's deadly weapons, asking Tatsu to enjoy his life. Tatsu is surprised he has been spared, spotting Hana running back to give him a bandage, weirded out. Now that he's alone, Tatsu reveals he could have freed himself all this time, but instead chooses to enjoy the amusement park, cutting over to Sakamoto, who indulges in the lovely handmade meals with the others. Shin utters that his mind is currently foggy, having been afflicted by the antidote, prompting Lu to ask Sakamoto if they could leave for the day. With Aoi arriving, she demands to know what our trio are hiding, cutting over to Tatsu, who is being confronted by Boiled. In an instant, Abiguro restrains and sits on Tatsu, but seeing Abiguro acting so cocky, Boiled orders Abiguro to close her legs. Embarrassed, Abiguro lets Tatsu go, learning that Abiguro and Boiled have been sent to ensure Tatsu doesn't fail, especially since Tatsu will be removed if he fails. Abiguro voices how excited she is to be hunting down the legendary Sakamoto, but Tatsu notes how goofy the two are, remembering that the duo had eliminated over 100 people during the Balkan battles 2 years ago. Back with Sakamoto, he along with Lu and Shin rush to explain their excitement for the amusement park, reassuring Aoi and Hana that they're good to continue exploring the park. More alert than ever, the gang ensures Hana and Aoi's time in the park isn't spoiled, cutting to later that evening where Aoi takes the gang to a haunted house, a location that favors assassins. Guided by a deceased nurse, the nurse explains her backstory, tickling Aoi and Hana's curiosity, but Lu is clearly hating the atmosphere. With the gang left to explore the haunted house, Boiled and Abiguro are seen spying on them through the control room, all whilst the gang compliment the unique details done to the interior. Out of nowhere, Shin is attacked by a zombie, forcing Sakamoto to draw the zombie's attention, evading and barraging the zombie with strikes, impressing Shin as the zombie seems to be stunned. Continuing through the ride, Sakamoto shows Shin the zombie's license, noting how the zombie was a mere rookie hitman. But Boiled and Abiguro can't help but be amazed at Sakamoto's moves even after retiring. Hearing Abiguro begging to slay Sakamoto, Boiled orders Abiguro to leave Sakamoto to him. Abiguro reassures Boiled Sakamoto is all his, asking Boiled to not work out when he's stressed, reminding Boiled he used to be Sakamoto's friend. Flashing back, we enter the Hitman training center, only to see a 15-year-old Boiled meeting a 14-year-old Sakamoto for the first time. Boiled had heard Sakamoto had beaten up his friends, impressed to see Sakamoto so skilled, so they ultimately clicked as friends. Spending more time together, they're seen alone during Valentine's Day, only for several girls to confess their love to Sakamoto. With Nagumo also showing off his haul of Valentine's gifts, Boiled confirms that Sakamoto and himself were actually not alike, something that makes Abiguro love Boiled even more, seeing Boiled acting tough. As Sakamoto and the family head deeper into the haunted house, Sakamoto is forced to deal with several more zombie attackers. Amazing Shin as Hana is unfazed by the horror around her. Not wanting to be beaten, Lu chugs her clan's remedy to suppress her fear, but Shin calls her out for simply using alcohol to quench her nerves. Passing by a sealed-off door, the gang hears some banging sound, prompting Lu to excitedly open the door, only to realize a horde of zombies had been lying in wait. With Shin unable to protect Aoi and Hana, Sakamoto attempts to make his way through the swarm, suddenly intercepted by Boiled himself. With Boiled blowing Sakamoto into a different section of the house, Boiled evades a card thrown at him. Hearing Sakamoto demand Boiled let him pass. With Boiled disappointed to see Sakamoto doesn't remember him, Sakamoto gets pissed, declaring he'll show Boiled hell. At the same time, Shin manages to clear the zombies, entering a room only to be relieved seeing Aoi and Hana sleeping peacefully. Speaking up, Abiguro reassures Shin that the girls have only been put to sleep, declaring that she and her zombies will have to distract Shin until Boiled is done. Out of nowhere, Lu fires off a kick that sends Abiguro flying. Something Shin recognizes is the drunken fist style of fighting. With Abiguro excited for a decent fight, we cut back to Boiled to ask again if Sakamoto remembers him. Ignoring the question, Sakamoto asks where his family is, dashing in close to sneak attack, but Boiled detonates an explosion before Sakamoto can get close. Equipping his special gloves, Boiled sends several more explosives bouncing around the room, detonating them only to use the explosion to land a flush punch on Sakamoto. Back with Lu, she rushes in for strike on Abiguro, but Abiguro nonchalantly catches Lu's fist, complimenting Lu's technique only to shake Lu until she gets sick. Wanted to have some fun, Abiguro orders Shin to be tied up, uttering that she wants to draw out Lu's strength, giving Lu a challenge. Abiguro wants Lu to land a hit on her every 10 seconds, or else Shin will be sliced, but Lu suddenly begins crying, yelling that she doesn't want to hurt anyone. Back with Sakamoto, we see him completely defeated by Boiled, listening as Boiled reminds Sakamoto that it's been 5 years since he's retired. When Sakamoto tries another attack, Boiled simply detonates another explosive, declaring that his super ball bombs combined with his rocket dynamite punch will ensure Sakamoto is defeated. Sakamoto is reminded of how cringy Boiled was, remembering a younger Boiled showing off his new gear along with the composition for said explosions. Annoyed at Sakamoto's weak attitude, Boiled chases Sakamoto with his explosions and fist, crying that he looked up to the Chad Sakamoto was. Charging up a lethal blow, Sakamoto catches a glimpse of his family, suddenly sent flying deep into the building corridor. As Boiled turns to leave, he bids farewell to his teenage memories with his best friend, but out of nowhere Boiled senses immense blood lust from down the corridor. Marching towards Boiled, Sakamoto begins listing the chemicals Boiled uses for his bomb's composition, declaring that he's finally remembered Boiled and will now show Boiled how much he's grown. Back with Lu, she manages to withstand several of Abiguro's strikes, impressing Shin as he thought he would be finished. As Abiguro sends a roundhouse kick, Lu manages to duck, striking Abiguro with her braids, luckily resetting the 10-second timer. Firing off an axe kick, Abiguro pummels Lu, frightening Shin as Abiguro turns to leave. Surprisingly, Lu gets back up with a nosebleed, laughing at how desperate Shin sounded. Abiguro gets weirded out, seeing Lu scoffing down more booze, but when Abiguro chases Lu with several attacks, she fails to land a single one, instead receiving a kiss that resets the timer. In a mere instant, Lu fires off a lethal kick of her own, terrifying Abiguro as she barely dodges, begging Lu to try and slay her. Sadly, Lu utters that it's against her family's rules to kill anyone, annoying Abiguro as she reminds Lu that Sakamotos are a family of 3. Catching Abiguro's kick, Lu is pissed hearing Abiguro calling their family matters stupid, countering with a devastating hook, but before it lands, Lu suddenly halts. Having awoken from her drunken daze, Lu asks to know where she is, but Abiguro begins to quiver. Having never considered anyone as her rival, Abiguro pulls Lu close, deeming Lu her frenemy for life. Back with Sakamoto, he terrifies Boiled, seeing as Sakamoto had slimmed down out of nowhere, but Boiled tries taunting Sakamoto when he reminds him of his family. Sakamoto states he believes in Shin and Lu, instantly dashing forth as he lands a swift punch on Boiled, blowing him through the building's walls. Following up, Sakamoto lands strike after strike, even clashing with Boiled's rocket fist, only to shatter it with his bare knuckles. Backing off, Boiled tanks all the blows, attempting to fire off several ball bombs, but Sakamoto catches each one before they have a chance to detonate, instead using them to empower his fist, knocking Boiled further back. Knocked down, Boiled demands to know how a retired Sakamoto is so strong. But Sakamoto reveals he has a reason to fight, having chosen to fight for the people he loves. Following a couple on a merry-go-round, they suddenly feel a massive rocking sound as something approaches their ride, revealed to be Sakamoto, who has slammed Boiled into a separate ride. As Boiled loses consciousness, we cut to Aoi, who has awoken next to Shin, Hana, and Lu, demanding to know how they got here. Making up an excuse, Shin rushes to search for Sakamoto. Cutting over to Sakamoto, he and Boiled nonchalantly exit the destroyed carriage, forcing Boiled to pay for the destroyed ride only for the two to head for some roasted pork buns. Joining the two, Shin is amazed to see Sakamoto so thin. Snapping some pics as Shin is reminded of the legendary Sakamoto, but Boiled is more curious as to how Sakamoto will get Don Denkai off his back. At that moment, Aoi appears, asking to know what this bounty on Sakamoto's head is. Forcing Shin and Boiled to sit in as well, Lu and Abiguro are seen escorting Hana elsewhere, all while Sakamoto reveals he has a bounty hit on him. Before Aoi can scold Sakamoto, Boiled asks that Aoi not be too harsh, seeing as Sakamoto was hiding his bounty to not worry Aoi, but Aoi orders Boiled to be silent. Taking out their family rules, Aoi reminds Sakamoto of Rule 6, asking Sakamoto to not hide anything from his family and instead gives Sakamoto permission to resolve things rather than hide it from his family. Seeing as things are fine now, the family head to enjoy the parade, prompting Shin to ask how Sakamoto plans to remove his bounty. Sakamoto says the only way is to find the client and make them withdraw the hit, but Abiguro says it'll take a while to track down the client. Shin asks if Boiled could give them his boss's contact details. Annoyed to see Boiled, is no help, only to part ways with the duo. With Sakamoto stating he has other connections, we cut to the next day, where Sakamoto has regained all his weight, all heading through several alleyways only to stand before a video rental store. Searching through the shelves of the store, Shin stumbles onto a movie titled Don Denkai, all three heading out back to enjoy the show. The disc describes Don Denkai as a Hitman organization with over 50 members, even describing Don Denkai's headquarters along with how the organization was formed. But as the movie wraps up, Sakamoto heads out to pay. Charged with 706,000 yen, Sakamoto turns to leave but is warned by the receptionist that someone Sakamoto used to work with is after him, unable to give any more information than that. That night, we see Nagumo dining with three others, questioned by Hyo, who accuses Nagumo of meeting with Sakamoto. But when Nagumo states he didn't, Shishiba asks that everyone quiet down since they're waiting for someone special. With Hyo and Nagumo bickering, Shishiba asks how Osaragi is doing, warned by Osaragi to not take another bite of his meal. Upon further inspection, Shishiba calls for the chef, suddenly slamming the chef onto the table only to slay the chef, having not wanted onions in his risotto. At that moment, an older-looking man introduces himself as Iria from the J, amazed to have all the order members before him. But Hyo points out they're missing 4 others. Shishiba adds that 3 members never show, but it's strange how Takamura isn't with them, all blaming Takamura's old age for forgetting their meeting. Getting down to business, Iria reveals that someone has been slaying various hitmen in the JAA, requesting that the order assist with finding and eliminating the perpetrator. Back with Sakamoto, he and the others have made it to Don Denkai HQ, ordering everyone to keep the violence to a minimum as they all don their stealth gear. Heading inside, we see 2 men talk about Boiled's recent defeat at the hands of Sakamoto, both individually taken out as Shin and Sakamoto make quick work of the men. Having found new disguises, Shin states they must climb to the top floor where the boss is, cutting to several minutes later where our trio knocks out another man with a stun gun. Having tied the man up, the trio head through the hallway towards the boss room. But Shin gets worried seeing as he can't detect anyone nearby, all ultimately reaching a set of massive doors. With Sakamoto giving the signal, they burst into the boss's room, shocked to see a pile of corpses all whilst Nagumo sits in the middle of the room. Declaring that he had slayed all the Don Denkai members and the boss himself, Nagumo apologizes for what he's about to do, suddenly blinking behind Shin. only to puncture his neck. Luckily, Nagumo was only kidding, having arrived too late and discovered the Don Denkai members were already dead. Sakamoto asks why Nagumo is here, hearing that there has been an absurd amount of hits on Hitman, with a total of 100 JA members losing their life within the past few months. Shin realizes 100 is a quarter of all professional hitmen, hearing Nagumo refer to the perpetrator as X or slur, confirming that the order has been dispatched to deal with this new threat. Lu takes the chance to ask what the order is, learning that the JA selects the best hitmen to take on impossible missions, and Sakamoto himself was once in the order. Lu and Shin remind Nagumo that Sakamoto has retired from killing, but Nagumo does mention how Sakamoto's bounty, along with the various hitmen being slayed, started around the same time. Elsewhere, we see a man dressed in all white mark his territory with an X, having used the blood from his enemies to draw his signature marking. The next day, Shin notes how annoying it is for so many hitmen to still be after Sakamoto, all watching as another hitman enters the store only to be knocked out by one of Sakamoto's gun racks. Sakamoto thinks back on Nagumo's words, pointing out that since Sakamoto struggled against Boiled, he'll surely struggle in the future, ordering everyone to get stronger in preparation for what is to come. As Sakamoto trains his cardio, Shin continues to train his psychic skills, all whilst Lu drinks herself silly, managing to dispatch another hitman whilst drunk. Cutting to Haisuk Mishimo, we see him feeding his pet bird Paisuk, having just spent the last of his money on bird food, but gets excited to slay and collect the bounty on Sakamoto's head. Back at Sakamoto's shop, Shin and Lu are annoyed that the store will need repairing due to the hitmen attacking Sakamoto, but seeing as they're low on funds, Shin suggests they enter a paintball tournament with a prize of 1 million yen. At that moment, Mishimo enters the store, holding up a slimmer-looking Sakamoto, only to ask if our trio knows where his target is. Luckily, Sakamoto's chubby disguise convinces Mishimo that he's got the wrong store, but Shin wonders how stupid Mishimo truly is. When Shin reads Mishimo's mind, Shin gets annoyed seeing a clutter of random thoughts, managing to convince Mishimo that Taro Sakamoto is a very common name. Completely lost, Mishimo reveals that he won't be able to cover the travel fee home, nor does he have any food or money, despairingly leaving the store. When Shin and Lu try to get back to work, Shin realizes that Mishimo is still looking at them, shedding tears as he cries for help. Reluctantly, our trio sends Mishimo off with a bag of pork buns, gratefully sharing the meal with his bird. That night, Mishimo returns to his rundown tent, having been a gift from his grandma, only to declare that he'll be rich one day. Mishimo thinks back on when some older men fired him from being a hitman, swearing that he'll prove the higher-ups wrong. But suddenly a gust of wind topples Mishimo's tent. On the brink of tears, Mishimo suddenly spots a flyer, seeing it to be a paintball tournament for 1 million yen, crying out that this may be his big break. As the day of the 52nd Ikurizaka paintball tournament kicks off, Shin and Sakamoto arrive bright and early, stocking up on some high-end walkie-talkies. Off to the side, they spot that Lu will be cheering them on, not wanting to participate, but suddenly the trio spot Mishimo trying to join by himself, reminded that only teams of 2 to 5 can join. Luckily, Mishimo spots our trio, officially forming a team with Sakamoto and Shin. With the announcer explaining the rules, she states that paintball BB pellets will be used, allowing the whole street to be their playgrounds. But Shin is more impressed that the event is to encourage a community cleanup of the neighborhood. As the players get into position, our trio are seen going over the rules. But as the game starts, 4 men in jumpsuits target Sakamoto's group. In an instant, the 4 men are struck with paintballs, shocking Shin as Mishimo manages to locate and strike the 4 men in mere seconds. Before Shin can ask any questions, he leaps to evade several pellets, managing to strike out 2 other players, but 2 men seem to have snuck up on Sakamoto during the chaos. Unfortunately, Sakamoto steals the men's guns, easily eliminating another party as he dreams of bulletproofing his store and stocking up on all sorts of cup ramen. Mishimo is grateful to have such competent teammates, wondering if Shin and Sakamoto are paintball nerds, but Lu accidentally gets carried away cheering for our trio, revealing Sakamoto to be Mishimo's target. As Mishimo checks the photo once more, Shin tries to cover it by pointing out features Sakamoto is lacking from the photo, but as Mishimo and Shin share a laugh, the three suddenly raise their weapons ready to brawl. As Mishimo finally realizes who Sakamoto is, he states he hates liars. But before the trio can turn on each other, another party attempts to snipe them from afar. Forced to scatter, Shin and Sakamoto take down the enemy team, all whilst Mishimo calls for Paisuk to airdrop his actual rifle. Lock and loaded, Mishimo sends a bullet flying directly at Sakamoto, forcing Sakamoto to deflect the bullet with his palm, but loses a portion of his hand in the process. As Mishimo runs off to regather his thoughts, Shin and Sakamoto are forced to focus on the paintball players that have surrounded them. As Mishimo and Paisuk run off, they both cry, fearing they'll have to take down the people that helped them. But as the paintball tournament begins to wrap up, we see Sakamoto instruct Shin to not expose himself when dealing with snipers. With Sakamoto taking charge, he peeks to try and spot Mishimo, but a bullet ricochets off a nearby street mirror, forcing Sakamoto to dodge. Seeing Paisuk nearby, Shin wonders where Mishimo is. Following Mishimo, who is amazed Sakamoto dodged another one of his shots. Shin gets skeptical at Mishimo's skills, but Sakamoto reveals that Mishimo's projectiles have absurd spin to them. Bullets, Mishimo confirms, are meant to ricochet as to prevent the target from tracking the sniper's position. Stealing his resolve, Mishimo opts to end this, firing off several bullets, forcing both Sakamoto and Shin to constantly be on the move, weaving in and out of alleys and running through neighborhoods to survive. Turning away from a construction zone, Sakamoto and Shin choose to hide for a bit, all whilst Mishimo reflects on life. Throughout his life, Mishimo was never able to measure up to his peers mentally or physically, but when it came to shooting, Mishimo discovered his one passion in life. Sadly, when Mishimo started his first job, the higher-ups refused to take on a man that only excelled in shooting, even being scolded for failing to hold a knife during his first mission, leading Mishimo to be fired not long after. With no job or money, Mishimo swore to prove everyone wrong by slaying the legend himself. But having been speaking through his mic, Shin and Sakamoto are saddened by Mishimo's backstory. Hearing Mishimo so distraught, Shin advises Mishimo to ignore the haters, flustering Mishimo. At that moment, Shin yells into his mic, managing to locate Mishimo's location on a building, but whilst Mishimo is recovering, Sakamoto picks up a stone. With Mishimo locking back in, he spots Sakamoto cocking back his arm, only to fire off the stone at Mishimo's rifle, instantly obliterating the weapon. As Mishimo finally realizes the monstrous legend Sakamoto is, the paintball tournament ends with Sakamoto's team deemed the winners. That evening, Mishimo gets a beating, only to break down feeling pathetic, but Sakamoto reassures Mishimo that he is one of the best snipers he's personally faced, a compliment that makes Mishimo cry even more. As Shin gives 50 yen of their prize winning to Mishimo, they use the remainder to clean up the town, but Aoi is still impressed when they bring home a paintball trophy. Shin takes the chance to ask how Sakamoto and Aoi met, reading Aoi's mind as she remembers the first time she met Sakamoto. Having seen some blood on Sakamoto's shirt, Aoi rushed to hand him a bandage, but Sakamoto silences Shin with his mind before Shin can read any more of Aoi's thoughts. Several days later, Sakamoto and Aoi visit Hana at school, grateful that Shin and Lu are manning the store whilst they're gone. Following Lu and Shin, we see Shin asking Lu to not use his apron, but Lu asks that Shin not read her mind. At that moment, Mishimo enters asking for any leftover pork buns, only to see Lu barrage Shin with pork buns. Annoyed, Lu states that she can't trust someone that is constantly reading her mind, something that hurts Shin deeply as he chooses to leave the store. Several minutes later, Lu is seen alone at the counter, greeting several customers in hazmat suits only to be mistaken as Shin. Having been kidnapped, Lu overhears Mr. Tanaka and Saba speaking about how Shin fled from them 13 years ago, but Saba realizes that they may have kidnapped the wrong person. Tanaka divulges that there were once experiments done to create psychics, but Shin was the only one they succeeded on, weirding out the men as they fear Shin will read their minds as well. Hearing Tanaka talking badly about Shin, Lu fires off a kick that knocks Tanaka's helmet flying, demanding that Tanaka restrain from insulting his friend. With Tanaka confirming they kidnapped the wrong person, we cut back to Shin, who has returned to the store to apologize to Lu, but notices Lu is missing. When Shin begins to inspect some loose glass, he notices Sakamoto and the others are home, apologizing as he failed to protect Lu. Luckily, Sakamoto reveals that Shin's apron has a GPS tracker on it, cutting back to Lu, who hears Tanaka freaking out for failing another mission. As the men continue their journey back to their lab, Lu regrets saying the mean things to Shin, only for the men to spot Sakamoto and Shin riding in on a motorcycle. As Sakamoto demands the men hand over Lu, Tanaka spots Shin is with Sakamoto, sending out some of their men to deal with Sakamoto. Sadly, Sakamoto easily deals with an attacker, followed by Shin derailing another by jamming a piece of wood in their rides, only for Sakamoto to grind away at another's helmet with his Hot Wheels. Seeing as they're out of men, Tanaka wonders what they should do, ordering Lu to be quiet as Tanaka fears failing more than anything. Hearing Shin is on the roof of their car, Tanaka calls on Seiba, taking over the wheel all while Seiba joins Shin, asking to get paid extra later on. With Shin taking a fighting stance, Seiba dons his suit, suddenly turning invisible only to knock Shin onto another car on the highway. Leaping after Sakamoto, Seiba attempts to put Sakamoto down, but is surprised to see Sakamoto block his invisible strike. As Sakamoto begins strangling Seiba, Seiba chooses to puncture Sakamoto's motorcycle's fuel tank, only to light it on fire. Seeing Sakamoto's ride explode, Seiba returns to Tanaka's car. Amazed, Sakamoto lives up to his legendary Hitman status, but apologizes for not being able to retrieve Shin. Following Sakamoto, he and Shin observe the GPS stop at Okatabe, a location Shin knows is the headquarters of the lab he grew up in. Shin utters that the original scientists weren't evil whatsoever, wondering what has changed since he left, both taking the bus to their destination. Having stopped outside the Okatabe Science Museum, Shin reveals that the lab is concealed in the basement, both choosing to enter in hopes of retrieving Lu. Upon entering the museum, our duo are stopped by some workers that convince Sakamoto and Shin to stop for a picture, both given dinosaur heads to pose and keep. Back on track, Shin guides Sakamoto to a hidden passage, all whilst Lu is wheeled through the lab, having been tied up. As Lu looks around the lab, she suddenly is stopped as Kashima asks if Tanaka had succeeded with capturing Shin, wondering if the girl before them is truly the psychic thereafter. Hesitantly, Tanaka lies, reminded by Kashima that Tanaka's life is on the line if they fail. But Lu is more curious as to why Kashima has a reindeer mask and stitches all over his body. Speaking up, Seiba reveals that he caught the wrong person, prompting Tanaka to be sent away with Lu, leading Kashima to ask Seiba to retrieve Shin himself. Back with Shin, he stands before several clocks, turning the clock's hands and maneuvering a nearby bear only to reveal a secret elevator. When Shin tries to enter the passcode from several years back, he's surprised to be denied, suddenly spotting the bear's head reveal a gun that fires at them. Managing to evade the gun spray, Sakamoto makes quick work of the brown bear, all watching as a second bear appears, but Shin skewers the white bear before it can fire off any projectiles. With a voice announcing that Phase 1 is over, the elevator along with the bear's corpses are removed, giving rise to the dinosaur bones behind them. Seeing the dinosaur attack with its tail, Sakamoto pulls Shin down, all whilst thinking about how Hana would love to see a real-life dinosaur. As Sakamoto continues to evade the dinosaur's advances, Shin manages to spot a device in the dinosaur's mouth, giving Sakamoto the idea to taser and paralyze the dinosaur. Sadly, the machinery controlling the dinosaur simply reboots, this time attacking Sakamoto more aggressively. Dodging to evade the dinosaur's tail, Sakamoto tries again to paralyze the creature, but gets his stun gun destroyed, pissing him off. No longer holding back, Sakamoto rushes towards the dinosaur's mouth, punching and shattering the machine in the dinosaur's mouth. Following up, Sakamoto knees the dinosaur away, only to finish off the creature with an axe kick. With Shin baffled by Sakamoto's sheer strength, we cut to Dr. Ishikawa, who begs to be given some time off, having been working for 3 days straight with no sleep. Refusing to hear it, a man in a suit knocks Ishikawa down, preparing to take Ishikawa's life when he hears Ishikawa call their research silly. At that moment, Sakamoto and Shin dispatch the man in the hazmat suit, exciting the researchers as they recognize Shin, revealing that the director Shin is looking for has been locked up in the lowest floor and the lab itself is taken over by an assassin group. Having appeared a year ago, the lab was overtaken by Kashima and his henchmen, dead set on integrating assassinations with new technology. Plus, Kashima has several powerful hitmen working for him. When Sakamoto declares they'll have to take care of Kashima first, Ishikawa hears someone coming, rushing to hide Sakamoto and Shin in lockers. At the same time, Tanaka is seen locked up, begging to be let out only for Liu to silence him with a kick. Annoyed, Tanaka points out how silly Liu is for trying to break the bars with a rock, both suddenly turning to greet director Asakura, who offers an alternative method to escape. Back with Ishikawa, he hurriedly greets mad Horiguchi, all whilst trying to not give away Shin and Sakamoto's hiding place. Intrigued, Horiguchi tortures Ishikawa with a borrowed pen, asking the other lab members if they know anything, but Horiguchi suddenly evades a stray pen. Spotting Shin has revealed himself. When Ishikawa asks why Shin isn't just hiding, Shin thinks back on the fond memories he had with the lab members, asking if Horiguchi is one of the leaders under Kashima. Confirming the fact, Horiguchi gets excited to show off their research, taking out a syringe, only to blink behind Shin stabbing him with said syringe. Putting some space between them, Horiguchi performs an experiment, suddenly changing Shin's voice as the syringe disrupts the signals in Shin's brain. Annoyed, Shin chases after Horiguchi, demanding that he fix him. But in an instant, Sakamoto appears, pummeling Horiguchi with a devastating punch. Having been finally free from the locker, Sakamoto asks if Shin wants to save the lab, both preparing to take back Shin's home. Back outside, we see Shishiba and Osaraji visiting the museum, both instructed by Nagumo to check out the place, curious if they'll manage to find a lead on Slur. Following Mishimo, he and Paisuke once again visits Sakamoto's store, spotting Hana sad, seeing as she's been left alone with no one to play with. Rushing to give her some treats, Hana simply cries more, but Mishimo promises to find Sakamoto and the others, only to send Paisuke off for some recon work. In the basement level 4, director Asakura introduces himself to Liu, but having mistaken him for the bad guy, Liu rushes to choke Asakura. With Asakura clarifying he's a good guy, we cut back to Sakamoto and Shin, who notice Horiguchi still standing, amazed to have finally met the legendary Hitman. Horiguchi is disappointed at how far Sakamoto has fallen, revealing that he had stuck a needle in Sakamoto as well. But as Sakamoto rushes to engage Horiguchi, Sakamoto's fist suddenly lands on Shin instead. Weirded out, Sakamoto hears that the needle Horiguchi stuck in him confuses the brain and switches enemies with foes. But before Horiguchi can boast anymore, Sakamoto smashes him with another heavy punch. Having aimed for Shin, Sakamoto works around Horiguchi's little trick, but Horiguchi simply gets back up, more excited to test out his experiments. Cutting to Liu, she hears that Asakura had been locked up because he disobeyed orders, but Liu gets annoyed, choosing to vent her frustration on Tanaka, the person who mistook her for Shin. Hearing Shin's name, Asakura reveals he was the one who gave Shin his psychic abilities, blaming himself for ruining the brat's life. Flashing back, we see a younger-looking Asakura forced to babysit a bratty Shin, both disliking each other, all whilst Asakura continued his research into the supernatural. One day, Ando, his acquaintance, had left Shin to Asakura, only to suddenly disappear. That night, Asakura grows more frustrated at the lack of breakthroughs in his research, only to see Shin curious in his research. Asakura mentions how although he has yet to uncover anything supernatural, he still holds out hope to be the first to revolutionize humanity, something Shin thinks is very cool. As Shin and Asakura spend more time together, Asakura becomes more drained, having to juggle babysitting Shin and continuing his research, passing through the lab one day only to hear fellow researchers mock Asakura's unrealistic research. Surprisingly, Shin stands up for Asakura, but later that night, Asakura finally manages to create a mixture that may change his career. At that moment, a tired Shin enters the lab, choosing to drink the newly created mixture, seeing as he is thirsty. But as Asakura rushes to check on Shin, Shin simply begins to vomit. The next day, Asakura sees no abnormal signs from Shin, but out of nowhere Shin states that he's not okay, having been able to read Asakura's mind. In the following days, Shin would tease Mr. Tada for fantasizing about Miss Namiki, horrifying Asakura as the lab members run several more tests on Shin. Over time, the lab members grew distant from Shin, denoting how Shin's powers are actually quite creepy. Not wanting Shin to live an isolated life, Asakura rushes to come up with a cure for Shin's powers. But when Shin asks if Asakura is proud of his greatest work, Asakura apologizes, having never wanted Shin to be tangled up in his research. Frustrated, Shin pushes Asakura aside, running away several days later, something that makes Lu and Tanaka bawl, hearing such a sad story. Lu reassures Asakura that Shin doesn't hate him, mentioning how Shin has grown used to his powers. Lu suggests for Asakura and herself to apologize to Shin, seeing as both of them fought with Shin, but Lu brings up Rule 11 of the Sakamoto family, uttering that anytime people fight, they should make up not long after. Laughing at his own pathetic attitude, Asakura reveals a vial of acid he can use to melt through the jail bars, only to ask if Shin has grown taller. Having alerted a guard, Asakura and Tanaka stand ready to face the guard, but in a moment Lu dispatches the guard, declaring that they'll begin making their way to where Shin is. Back with Sakamoto, he's seen misfiring onto Shin, having learnt that Horiguchi can choose to turn on and off the needle, interfering with Sakamoto's attacks. Running through his experiments, Horiguchi unveils a trick to make his arm grow muscular, leaping in close only to smash the ground in front of Sakamoto and Shin. Before Shin can retaliate, Horiguchi simply activates Shin's needle, forcing Shin to attack Sakamoto instead. Unveiling another trick, Horiguchi increased his leg speed, dashing behind Shin only to send him flying through a glass wall. Seeing Sakamoto attempt a sneak attack from behind, Horiguchi manages to freeze Sakamoto in place only to blow him back. Seeing Horiguchi mocking Sakamoto, Shin reminds Horiguchi he can read minds, but getting annoyed, Horiguchi simply assaults Shin with several needle stabs, sending him onto the floor. Horiguchi does wonder why his boss is after Shin's stupid skill, something that enrages Shin, but Sakamoto reminds Shin to not be so emotional. Sakamoto declares he'll show Horiguchi why Shin's powers aren't stupid, prompting Horiguchi to inject himself with several needles, suddenly bloating up as his figure becomes monstrous. With Sakamoto coming up with an idea, he orders Shin to stand in front of Horiguchi, all whilst turning his back to him. When Horiguchi tries to attack, Sakamoto simply starts his own barrage targeted at Shin, but as Shin reads Sakamoto's mind, he dodges Sakamoto's attacks, allowing Sakamoto to wail onto Horiguchi. Unable to find a counterplay, Horiguchi is ultimately beaten up and knocked aside, shriveling up as he's been defeated. As the lab members tidy up the mess, Tada and Namiki help remove the needles in Shin and Sakamoto. With Shin and the lab members catching up, they begin heading toward the 4th floor where Lu is being held, all while Shin hears that an order member could easily take out 10 Shins in a mere 6 seconds. Shin is annoyed that Nagumo is an order member, but out of nowhere our duo runs over a trapdoor, forcing Sakamoto to kick Shin aside, all whilst he falls into the trap. Cutting to the 5th basement floor, we see Kashima escorted by Onigahara and Takamito, all three noticing a pile of bodies with Shishiba and Osaraji as the culprits. Kashima demands to know why order members are here, hearing that the order are after a slur character, but sadly Kashima has no idea what they're talking about. Before Shishiba leaves, he mentions how manufacturing illegal weapons is a violation against the JA, glaring at Kashima as he states he'll have to dispose of him. Before Shishiba can take another step, Onigahara and Takamito blink in front of Shishiba, asking for permission to slay Shishiba. Before Kashima can give the order, Osaraji pierces and decapitates the men in an instant. When Shishiba turns to Kashima, he's surprised to see Kashima in tears, having felt sorry for the men that passed away before him. Taking off his deer mask, Kashima unravels some stitches in his arms only to show off several blades in place of his hand. Shishiba and Osaraji are disgusted to see a killer scold them for taking another's life. But out of nowhere, Kashima manages to land a slash onto Shishiba, declaring that his boss pardons his kills. Retaliating, Shishiba twists and breaks Kashima's neck, confirming that Kashima is connected to Slur. As the duo leave, they suddenly sense Kashima getting back up, uttering that he has an artificial skeleton, but out of nowhere Sakamoto falls onto Kashima. Surprised, Shishiba nonchalantly greets Sakamoto, introducing Osaraji to Sakamoto, who considers Sakamoto as a big teddy bear. Sakamoto hears that Kashima is the evil boss of the labs, pissing Kashima off as he declares he'll offer Sakamoto's head to his boss, all whilst Kashima continues to unravel his weapon-filled body. As Osaraji continues to admire Sakamoto's adorable body, we cut to Shin, who is making his way to the 4th floor, suddenly leaping back as he detects that Seiba is attacking him. As Seiba rushes to claim Shin's head, Shin attempts to read Seiba's mind, but is knocked back, unable to see where the attack is coming from. With Shin getting destroyed by Seiba, we cut back to Sakamoto, who watches Kashima latching onto him with some grapples, only to be forced to dodge Kashima's beam breath. Seeing as Sakamoto is fighting Kashima, Shishiba and Osaraji leave to track down Slur, but Osaraji gets worried that Sakamoto will be slayed. Luckily, Shishiba states that Sakamoto isn't the type to ever die, but as we cut back to Shin, he's seen on the brink of death, having endured a beating. When Seiba lunges in for a lethal blow, Shin suddenly spots Paisuk nearby, choosing to tank the stab only to wipe some of his blood onto Seiba. In an instant, Seiba is pierced by several bullets, revealed to be Mishima, who has come to save the day. Seeing Kashima mocking his family and is dead set on hunting them down, Sakamoto chooses to take out a pen, dashing in close before Kashima can fire off another beam, only to plug the weapon with his pen. As the weapon backfires on Kashima, Sakamoto asks that Kashima refrain from insulting his family, all whilst Liu and the others hold Tanaka hostage, seeing as several more guards are searching for them. Back with Shin, he is glad to see Mishimo is here to assist, but as for Seiba, he wonders why a sniper would even show himself, suddenly caught off guard when Mishimo fires his ricocheting bullets to attack Seiba, who is hiding. Realizing that Mishimo has found his hiding spot, Seiba activates his stealth, attempting to flee, but Mishimo simply fires off bullets to tear down the railing Seiba is on. As the smoke clears, Mishimo spots Seiba standing on a railing, preparing to slay Seiba, but having wrapped a pipe in his invisible suit, Seiba tosses the pipe at Mishimo's shoulder. Having pierced Mishimo's shoulder, Seiba rushes to pin down and slay Mishimo, but Mishimo manages to get off another ricocheting shot, able to pierce and tear off one of Seiba's arms. Before Mishimo can ready another shot, Seiba reveals he was only concealing his lost arm, thrusting his blade into Mishimo's stomach only to kick away Mishimo's remaining ammo. Before Seiba can deal with Shin, Kashima cries that they'll be taking out Seiba here and now, only to order Paisuk to deliver one final bullet. Having fired off a bullet that missed Seiba, Seiba mocks Kashima's pathetic attempt, but is surprised to see that Kashima was actually aiming at a sprinkler above him. As the water disarms Seiba's invisibility, Shin rushes in to grapple and pins Seiba down, officially knocking him out. Out of nowhere, several explosions can be heard across the lab, but as we cut back to Sakamoto, he hears that Kashima has rigged up several explosions that will wipe out the lab in 20 minutes. Getting serious, Sakamoto states he'll only need 5 to defeat Kashima, beckoning Kashima to rush in for an attack. But having easily dodged, Sakamoto hears that Kashima's body has been replaced with various weapons making up 70% of his body. Impressed, Sakamoto takes out weapons of his own, showing off some stickers, a mechanical pencil, and a flyer. Insulted, Kashima lets loose several projectiles. But as Sakamoto evades the projectiles, he retaliates by flinging the pins lead into Kashima's eye. Falling to his knees, Kashima's eye begins to bleed, but having followed up with a sticker to his other eyes, Sakamoto manages to obscure Kashima's vision, only to land a powerful whip that sends Kashima flying. Seeing Kashima unfazed, Sakamoto wonders if Kashima is immortal. Hearing that Slur was the only one that valued Kashima, therefore Kashima will give his life for Slur. As a train approaches Kashima from behind, both Sakamoto and Kashima leap to avoid it. But having landed on the train, Kashima chooses to bind and drag Sakamoto along the tracks. Annoyed by Sakamoto's carefree attitude, Kashima watches as Sakamoto slices the metal bindings with a flyer, only to fling Kashima into a nearby wall using the same binds extruding from Kashima's body. In a separate tunnel, an underground subway suddenly spots Sakamoto tackling Kashima through a wall, prompting both men to fly through the subway carriages. Looking around, Kashima downs a drink, confirming that Sakamoto is truly a legendary hitman, able to mask his presence and blend in with the crowd. Having snuck beside Kashima, Sakamoto lands a disgusting kick onto Kashima, glad to see he can go all out, seeing as Kashima is immortal. Flashing back, we see a younger-looking Kashima being berated for beating up men that were torturing a cat. But often the crowd Slur passes by, dispatching the onlookers glaring at Kashima. Having praised Kashima for slaying for the better of others, Slur marks Kashima's lips with his signature cross, officially deeming Kashima as his own property. In the present, Kashima declares he'll slay all that gets in his way. But seeing an elderly woman enter the carriage, Sakamoto drags Kashima into the section between carriages only to begin barraging Kashima with hundreds of punches. With the carriage unable to withstand Sakamoto's power, Kashima is forced into a separate carriage, attempting to spray down Sakamoto with bullets. But Sakamoto simply deflects them all with a railing. Using the railing to smack Kashima around, Kashima leaps back only to unveil a massive weapon in his chest, managing to blow Sakamoto out of their current train onto an adjacent one. Monstrously, Sakamoto recovers, sprinting along the adjacent train only to hop back onto his original train. With Kashima sitting down to relax, he horrifically sees Sakamoto coldly enter the cabin, rushing to pick up nearby passengers only to toss them at Sakamoto. Sadly, Sakamoto nonchalantly catches and places the passengers back down. But choosing to end their duel, Sakamoto combos Kashima with several strikes only to drag his unconscious body out of Sato Station. Reporting the good news to Shin, Sakamoto hears that he has 15 minutes left until the lab explodes. Choosing to toss Kashima's corpse aside, all whilst we cut to Lu, who saves a researcher from a piece of falling debris. Before Lu can think of a way out of the lab, a piece of the ceiling falls on her, forcing Shin to tackle and save Lu. As Mishimo joins them, we see Lu and Shin are awkward at first, but suddenly Lu breaks down apologizing for stealing Shin's apron earlier. Having made up, Asakura greets Shin as well, both feeling awkward as it's been a while, but Shin reminds everyone they only have 10 minutes to spare. Seeing as they need to save everyone, Shin asks Asakura to sketch out the floor plan of the lab, focusing only to ask Lu and Mishimo to rescue some people still trapped in the lab. As for Shin and Asakura, they head elsewhere, all whilst Asakura appreciates Shin's control over his powers, reminiscing on the times they would spend together. At the same time, we see Shishiba and Osaraji scrubbing through the lab surveillance, only to confirm that Slur is the mastermind behind the lab's takeover. Back with Shin, he sends Asakura to help someone all whilst Shin continues forward, but as Shin begins to approach a man, he suddenly halts, seeing the man's cold presence. Suddenly sensing his own demise, Shin freezes all while Slur passes by Shin, asking Shin to say hello to Sakamoto for him. Having saved everyone, Shin and Asakura meet up with the lab researchers outside, flustered to see everyone admiring how much Shin has grown. Taking the chance to introduce himself to Sakamoto, Asakura thanks Sakamoto for raising Shin in his absence, only to cut to later that night, where the entire family has finally regrouped for a nice homely dinner. As Shin and Lu continue to bicker, Shin suddenly gets terrified, seeing that Sakamoto wants to silence them in his head.